offer my deepest loving pranams at the divine lotus feet of our Swami, Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Loving Sai Ram to our elders, sisters and brothers. On behalf of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization UK, I'm very happy to welcome our guest speaker today, Sister Aparna Murali. We are grateful that she has agreed to share with us her most precious experiences with Swami. Sister Aparna is very fortunate to be born in a family devoted to Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba since the early 1960s. The Sri Sathya Sai Bal Vikas laid the foundation, and 3 years as a student in Sri Sathya Sai College, Anantapur, convinced her that loving God is the greatest adventure. Professionally, she is a genetic counselor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of California, Los Angeles. She feels blessed to have served in various roles in the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization as an officer at the center, region, national, and zone 1 levels. She's very active in various programs. She participated in the Committee of Facilitators for the Sri Sathya Sai Young Adult Leadership Program in 2015. She was a co-planning team member for the first National USA Sai Women's Conference in 2019, and most recently, the 2020 SSSIO Ladies' Day online celebration. Sister Aparna currently serves as the National Education Coordinator of SSSIO USA. Sister Aparna, welcome.
Sai Ram. I want to offer my love and gratitude at the divine lotus feet of our most beloved Bhagawan. I want to offer this prayer on all our behalf. Tvameva mata cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Shri Sai Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. My love and gratitude to Sai, who is my mother, my father, my family, my treasure, my wisdom, and my all. And my love and gratitude to the sweet Sai, who lives in you and loves through all your hearts. Sai Ram, everybody. It is such a joy to start my day in the company of devotees of Bhagawan, and also to start the day just thinking about him and reliving all those sweet moments and the messages received from Bhagawan. So I want to thank SSSIO UK for this kind invitation, and it is a blessing. I feel every time I get this opportunity to think about Swami, I feel like the speaker is the most benefited from the experience, because for the past few weeks I have been connecting with Swami and asking him for guidance. when Sister Renu and Brother Balu had reached out, I had asked them if there was any specific topic they had in mind. And Sister Renu said, any experiences with Swami would be wonderful. So I'd been intensely praying to Swami for guidance. And it has been a very, I would say, amusing week, because there were so many ideas that Swami would introduce. And I was like, really, Swami, this topic, that theme. And then finally yesterday, he gave a very, very, very interesting insight. He said, talk about chocolate cake. I said, Swami, chocolate cake? How do I make the connection? So then I started, just thinking about chocolate cake, and I'm going to eventually get to it. But I'm sure many of you like chocolate cake. I like chocolate cake. I don't have it as often as I would like. But, maybe some of you like chocolate, but, everybody has some affinity to cocoa, right? You might, I guess Milo drink is very popular, or hot cocoa, but some form of cocoa is favored, I would imagine. So I said, Swami, chocolate cake. And then Swami said, he asked the question, how do you bake a chocolate cake? What are the ingredients? So I'm going to leave you with that first question, which is, what are the ingredients that you need to bake a chocolate cake? If you know it, go ahead. You can write it down, or you can share it with your family members who are seated around you. I understand this is Saturday afternoon, a little bit past 2 p.m. It's Saturday morning, just a little bit past 6 a.m. for me here in Los Angeles. So go ahead and write down or make a mental note, or you can even Google, what are the ingredients that you need for chocolate cake. And I'm going to come back to it. So I feel very, very fortunate, very blessed that my grandparents came into Swami's fold in the early 1960s. My maternal grandfather used to practice pranayama and yoga, and his teacher, his guru at that time, informed him that God himself has descended on earth. His name is Sathya Sai Baba. He's coming to Coimbatore, which is where my maternal grandparents lived. So he advised him to go and have darshan of Bhagawan. So to honor his guru's words, my grandfather went, and when he entered the area where the meeting was being set up, he was kind of taken aback, because my grandfather was used to accustomed to more, ashram style setting where, everything is minimal. There's nothing ostentatious. But when he entered the meeting hall, he saw that there was a pandal or a dais that was set up, nice, floral decorations, and there was a chair for Bhagwan. And he kind of felt like, if this is God, why does he need, all these, extravagant decorations? Isn't that a waste of money? That was a thought that he had. And then Bhagwan came for darshan, there was bhajans, and then Bhagwan also gave a discourse. And in the middle of the discourse, just out of the blue, Bhagwan said something that just caught my grandfather's attention, and I think also kind of stole his heart away. So Bhagwan made the reference. He said, some people in this audience look around and they see all these, buntings and these floral arrangements, and they're thinking, why does God need such elaborate decorations? And then Bhagwan said, this is all I desire is the fragrance of love in your hearts. I don't need any of these things, but since devotees have a desire to express their love for me, I make allowances for that. And my grandfather felt like, Bhagwan was directly speaking to him and answering that question. And he kind of felt like, his innermost thought was not only acknowledged, but the question was also answered. So slowly he started making trips to Puttaparthi, and that's how the family came to Bhagwan, or Bhagwan came to the family. Either which way you look at it. So I would say, like, many of the young adults, who are tuning in or listening to a recording later, or even, other devotees, I feel like, I grew up with Swami. But growing up with Swami doesn't necessarily mean that, you fall in love with him right away. I feel like each individual's journey is always a special journey between your own heart and God. I always believe, even more so strongly now, that when Bhagwan says it's only a heart-to-heart connection, you don't need anybody to mediate this relationship between you and me. He truly means it. He not only means it, he demonstrates that each one of us have a very unique heart-to-heart connection with him. But when I was a little one, I used to be very afraid of Bhagwan. I used to think of him as a policeman because, just like any other child, I was not a bad kid, but some amount of naughtiness I think is healthy, and it's good for everybody to go through that experience. So my mom, especially, she would say, like, if I did something, if I didn't listen to her, or if I got delayed in, answering her questions or anything at school, she would always say, well, just wait till Swami comes to Chennai. I'm going to tell him this. I think nowadays the SSC teachers get invoked. I'm sure the parents say that, oh, I'm going to tell your Balvika's guru that you did this. Somehow I feel like, that's a very interesting way to parent. It works. It's worked for ages. So I used to literally feel, because Bhagwan would come to Chennai every January, I used to feel like, oh my gosh, Amma is going to tell Swami that I did this, this and this. Like, she had a laundry list of things that she was going to complain to Swami about. And she would say, like, Swami is going to catch you and he's going to scold you. So I used to be very afraid of Bhagwan. God fearing was 100% true. Like, I was literally God fearing. When we made the first trip to Puttaparthi as a family, my older siblings and my parents had gone a couple of years before I did. So the first trip that we made, I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And I still have, very vivid memories. This was, in the late 80s. And it was just, I grew up in Chennai. I was a city kid. And just the road trip to Parthi was so fascinating for me, going through different parts of India, going through the cities and the small villages, all the cows that line up, the farmers who are working, and then the little children, especially as you get closer to Parthi. In those days, little children would stand by either side of the road and they would wave, and it just felt, very, very special. And once we reached inside the ashram, this was the first time where I felt like, there was this very peaceful kind of silence. Everybody spoke very softly, very sweetly, and very kindly. And there was this silence that, it just made you feel good. It was not empty. That silence was filled with love and filled with peace. And that kind of touched my heart. And when we sat in the darshan for the first time, it was on the sands, and the sky was the roof, and you could hear the interview door open just with a click, where Swami would unlock it. And as soon as he did that, all of a sudden there would be this, just extraordinary silence. You just felt like, not just alone extraordinary silence. I felt like even the heartbeats of everybody seated was united. It's synchronized, and everybody's attention was on that beautiful, gorgeous, figure of Bhagwan, the orange robe and the huge crown of head. And Swami would come, he would walk, and so gently, and it was such a joy just to observe him. I was still afraid of him. I don't think that changed overnight. But during the first trip, Bhagwan had called our family in for an interview. And when we entered, because I felt like, my mom is going to complain about me to Swami, I found a small corner all the way in the back of the interview room. I didn't want to sit close to Bhagwan at all. I wanted to be as physically as far away from him. But once Bhagwan started interacting, talking to everybody, somehow something changed in my own heart. I started developing. I remember, I felt like, I started feeling like I want to be close to him now. That Bhagwan has that power to attract because he's pure love, just pure love. He has this tremendous capacity to attract you because of the power of his love. And he called our family inside in the inner interview room, and he didn't look at me. He didn't acknowledge me. He probably knew that I would maybe freak out. So he was sensitive to the needs of an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old. So he kind of left me alone, but he was, talking to my other family members. And out of the blue, he looked at my older brother, and he asked him a question. He pointed to my mom, and Bhagwan asked my brother, "Who is she?" And my brother was kind of amused. He was thinking like, well, Swami, you called us in. You know who we all are. And so he said, Swami, Amma. And then he pointed my mom to my dad, and he said, who is she to him? And then my brother said, wife, Swami. And then he kept going. Bhagwan asked, who is she to your grandfather? And then he said, daughter-in-law, Swami. And then Swami asked, who is she to your uncle? And then my brother, who's, he's really looking puzzled now. Is this some sort of a quiz in relationships? So he said, Swami, sister-in-law, Swami. And then Swami said, who is she to your wife? Now my brother was maybe 14 or 15 years old, and he couldn't contain his giggles. He just laughed and he kept quiet. He didn't say anything. And then Bhagwan answered. He said, mother-in-law, right? See, your mother is a mother to you, is a wife to your father, is a daughter-in-law to your grandfather, is a sister-in-law to your uncle, and she will be a mother-in-law to your wife. Look at me. I'm a mother to you. I'm a mother to your mother. I'm a mother to your father. I'm a mother to your grandfather. I'm a mother to your uncle. And I'll be a mother to your wife. I am a mother in love. The law will change, but my love will never change. My love is like that of 1,000 mothers. Right? And if you just, reflect on it, Swami's, Bhagwan is reinforcing that his relationship with us is a constant. Our relationship with each other, it changes, based on our connections, right? It's not the same, but Bhagwan's relationship with each and every one of us is a constant. That doesn't change at all. So when I heard Bhagwan say these words, I don't know, for some reason I started crying uncontrollably. I was in the back. I was not being loud. But I felt like something opened up in my heart, because that love that warm, fuzzy feeling just overtook me. And then that's when I got, I would say, like, the first taste of that, divine love. And then that kind of sowed the seed of yearning more for that kind of love, right? So when I came out of the interview room, I made a remark to my father and my mother, saying, like, how come Bhagwan talked to each one of you, but he didn't talk to me? He talked to each one of you. He asked you questions. Um, my father, he very sweetly said, well, this is your first trip here. Maybe Swami is letting you to kind of get more comfortable. And like all mothers, my mom immediately took advantage, and she she kind of said, well, if you're a good child, of course Swami is going to talk to you. So because she said that, and I love my mother, I said, okay, I'm going to be as good as possible, so that Bhagwan will talk to me also. So what that meant was, when we came back to Chennai, I would get up at 5 in the morning without any prompting from my mom. I would brush my teeth and I would stand in front of the altar and I would say all my prayers very loudly, like just at the top of my voice. It was like very visible discipline and the very visible goodness that was being demonstrated. Uh, but it was kind of like, 6 months, 7 months, I would hold steady, and then it would kind of start fading away. And then Swami would come to Chennai, and again it would intensify. So it was kind of like, up and down a little bit. But the same trip, we had a chance to meet with Kasturi Tata. Professor Kasturi is the biographer. He wrote Satyam Shivam Sundaram, and just a wonderful devotee of Bhagwan, a very inspiring person. He knew my maternal grandfather, so all of us went to greet him. And that was my first interaction with Kasturi Tata. And he knew that, somehow I had this fear about Bhagwan. And he shared a story, a very beautiful story, to kind of, reveal a different aspect of, Bhagwan's personality. Because, as a child, even as a devotee, if you're a newcomer, you kind of, see Bhagwan from a distance. You just see Bhagwan either walking, or, those who came later, you saw him in a wheelchair. So you just get a glimpse of Bhagwan. And then when you listen to, online satsangs, then you feel like, different facets of Bhagwan are being revealed to you. So Professor Kasturi shared this story, and he was kind of trying to make a point that Swami was the biggest prankster. He loved to pull pranks on the devotees around him. And he said, so one day Bhagwan had told Kasturi Tata that some folks from Bangalore, they wanted to feature Kasturi Tata in the newspaper, because Sanatana Sarthi, Kasturi Tata was the editor. It was being published, and a few, I think maybe volume 1 and 2 of Satyam Shivam Sundaram was also published. So they wanted to run a feature on Professor Kasturi. And so Bhagwan said they want a photograph, and I have the camera. So just come to the interview room in the afternoon. I will take your picture. So Professor Kasturi was kind of like feeling really good. He was feeling very important. He was like, okay, one, they're asking for a photograph of me. Number two, Swami himself is going to take my photograph. So he said he had a good wash, and he wore his best kurta and dhoti that was neatly starched. And he had the habit of putting vibhuti, like a patta across his forehead. And he said he was ready, and he checked himself out in the mirror, and he went to the interview room at the designated time. And Swami was ready for him. And Swami had set up a camera inside the interview room. And Kasturi Tata said, these are olden days, so the camera was different. It was mounted on a tripod, and it was like it had a huge body. And the photographer had to put like a cover over their head and over the camera. And then they would say, ready, 1, 2, 3, and then they would click. So Bhagwan made Kasturi Tata change his position, chin down, like not up, and smile, but smile without showing your teeth, like very elaborate, maybe he spent 25 minutes in getting Kasturi Tata ready for just this one photograph. So he was kind of pumping up Professor Kasturi. So the moment came, and Swami got inside the hood, and Swami said, I'm going to say, ready, 1, 2, 3. On 3, I'm going to click. So just you hold steady. Don't move at all. Right? So Bhagwan goes in and he says, ready, 1, 2, 3. And at the moment of 3, boom, something jumps out of the camera. And Professor Kasturi shrieks at the top of his voice because he's like completely caught off guard. What jumped out of the camera? And it was a toy mouse. Here, Bhagwan was pulling a prank on Professor Kasturi. And he said, what, you're thinking your head is, getting bigger and bigger, thinking that you're the editor of Sanatana Sarthi and you've written so many books and you're very close to me. I did this to make sure that your head doesn't get too big for your body. And they both had a good laugh. And I don't know, that also had, some sort of an impact that, we kind of, we tend to put God at a distance. I think there is this inclination that God should be worshipped, which he should. God is, he's fully, I don't want to use the word deserving, but it is. It's God needs to be revered and respected and worshipped and adored. But also, through these various interactions, I started to be, having this feeling that more than anything, just like God also wants to be loved. uh, you know, I've heard this beautiful message that God is everywhere, but His most favorite place in the entire universe is in your heart. That's His most favorite place. So when I heard the story from Professor Kasturi, I thought, oh, that's not too bad. Swami is not, he loves to have fun. I could start slowly relating to him. And Professor Kasturi also, captured it very beautifully in one of his talks. He said, Bhagwan, um, is many, he has many facets, many aspects. But no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, he's available for you. He doesn't have this expectation that if you're here, that's when I will connect with you. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey. As a matter of fact, he has even said, even the atheist, God is available for them. But Professor Kasturi captured it so beautifully. He said, Bhagwan is very, he will come and he'll reach out to you wherever you are, but he'll also make sure that you're progressing in your journey. So he said, Bhagwan will make the sleeping to wake, the waking to sit, the sitting to stand, the standing to walk, the walking to run, the running to reach, and the reaching to merge. It's so beautiful. It's so poetic. Bhagwan will reach out to wherever you are, but once the connection happens, he will make the sleeping to wake, the waking to sit, the sitting to stand, the standing to walk, the walking to run, the running to reach, and the reaching to merge. Right? That is the beauty of our Bhagwan. The impact that he can have on you, just remembering him, contemplating on him, reading his discourses, and trying to put that into practice in our daily lives you will see a steady progress. Your life will never be the same once you open your hearts to his presence, to his love, and to his wisdom. So this was, I was a little one, and then even the story of going to Anantapur is a funny one, because I had I had no intention or dreams of going to Anantapur, and thanks to my mom again, uh, she kind of tricked me into filling out an application, and then of course, I think Swami had a good accomplice in my mom. I think both of them conspired, but I'm so glad and so grateful that they conspired. And Bhagwan blessed me with the opportunity to be his student. And I'm still learning what it means to be his student. Every day it's a discovery. But what Anantapur did for me personally as an individual was, up until that point, I would say I was the center of my universe, and everything revolved around me. Yeah, everything was oriented towards, what my needs are, what my desires are. And once when I joined Anantapur, somehow, that there was a shift, a very unconscious shift. Now the universe revolved around Bhagwan, and I was just one such particle in his orbit, because the attention completely shifted focus from myself to Bhagwan, because everything is oriented. That's how the structure is also. If you look at the Anantapur, the institution's schedule, the structure, everything is geared towards, it's always focused towards Bhagwan. Right from the time you wake up in the morning all the way till you go to bed at night, um, everybody in that environment, they're asking the same question to themselves. Am I making Swami happy? Is Swami happy with me? So everything that you do, that's the benchmark that you use, is Bhagwan happy with me? Is Bhagwan happy with my grades? Is Bhagwan happy that I have 100% attendance at Suprabhatam? I'm not missing Suprabhatam. So everything becomes, you start thinking more and more about Bhagwan. And that was a wonderful practice. So this experience I wanted to share from my college days, it's actually a two-part series. So I'm just going through when I was a little kid to now college. In my final year, I had an opportunity to participate in the sports meet. Every year, they would select about 4 to 8 students from each campus to be a part of the procession when Bhagwan enters the stadium and leaves the stadium in the morning, and for the evening function. So you're just part of the procession. So typically when you're part of the procession, who are there, right? So those days Sai Geeta was there. She would always lead the procession. Another wonderful devotee of Bhagwan, lot of inspiration. Her focus and her attachment to Bhagwan was just so inspiring. So Sai Geeta would lead the procession. And then there would be the Vedam brothers, the brothers who are doing the Bhangra dance, and then the institute band, the marching band. And then there would be students on motorbike. So usually if there is like a presidential motorcade, any motorcade for that matter, they would have, individuals on motorbikes, leading in front of the car. So the students were selected for that. And by Bhagwan's grace, I was given an opportunity to be a part of that procession. So the qualification for this, and there might be some sisters who are listening to this, and maybe they were also part of this, so they can relate to what I'm sharing. The qualification for this is, of course, you need to have good grades, should be, a good student of Sai overall. And you should know how to drive a motorbike at maybe 3 kilometers an hour. So basically, very slowly. You should know how to ride a motorbike very slowly. So there was one sister who knew how to drive a motorbike in Anantapur, so she kind of taught all of us. It's fascinating, when you think about it. There are brothers who will do Bharatanatyam dance in front of Bhagawan, and there are sisters who will drive motorbikes and do stunts for Bhagawan. So when you're motivated by God, you don't see any limitations. You feel like you can do anything because you're doing it you're motivated by God, and you're motivated for God, and you're doing it with God, right? When that motivation is there, it is internal. You don't need, you don't need other people to be also doing what you're doing for you to feel like, okay, this is something I should be doing. It's just it sustains you automatically. So we were game, we all learned, we practiced in Anantapur. And then when we came to Parthi, we practiced in the indoor stadium. And many of you might have seen, if you have been there for the sports meet, it's a wonderful occasion. If not, you may have watched it on videos as well. It's just an extraordinary experience where, the focus is again not so much competition, but cooperation. Right? It's sports and cultural meet. So Swami always emphasizes on coming together, on working together. And the sports and cultural meet is a fantastic example because almost all the events, it's very rare that there'll be individual events. They're always group events, because Swami wants to make sure everyone is included. Everyone has an opportunity to participate. Because when you participate, it creates more opportunities for Bhagavan to shower his grace in you. So if you look at the sports and cultural meets, it's always group events, right? It's not individual. So in the Hillview Stadium, we had a practice session, and they had given us cues, like, when Bhagavan leaves the mandir, like, we get into our lineup. And when Bhagavan crosses the general hospital, that's when we start our bikes. And so we were given all our cues and we were ready. And so sweet of Bhagavan, because all our brothers, he made sure that the Anantapur sisters would be right in front of his car, like a father and like a mother, right? So he would keep us closest to him for our own protection also, right? So we got the cue that Bhagavan has left the mandir. And up until that point, I was somehow very confident. But once we got that first cue, I don't know, I felt like all the butterflies that existed in the entire world actually lived inside my own stomach. I was getting slightly nervous because we are not practiced with Bhagavan. We just practiced on our own. So this is the first time it's actually, the real thing, right? So then the second cue came that Bhagavan has crossed the general hospital. So we started the motorbikes. Now, just to give you a sense of, physically how far we are from him, in the morning session, so we took turns. We were four of us from Anantapur. So in the morning, 2 of us were in front of Swami's car. And on the drive back from the stadium back to Mandir, the other 2 sisters were in front of Swami's car. So we took turns, yeah. How close was Bhagavan? I could see him in my rear view. That's how close he is, right? So I could see, in my rear view, the car coming closer and closer. And then, then the cue came, Sai Gita started walking, and then the Vedam brothers, the Bhangra brothers, the Institute band, and then the brothers from Parthi campus, Brindavan campus, they started on the bikes, and then we started. The moment we started, within just 3 feet, my bike stopped. And I was like, oh my gosh, Swami's behind me. So I gave the bike a kickstart. It started, it went 3 or 5 more feet, and then again it stopped. So now I was getting, I was started to panic. And then I started it again. Now we are inching into the stadium. And in the beginning part of the stadium, there was some sort of a cover because we had brothers lined on the either side of the road holding flags. So the audience who were seated in the stadium, they could not see me. But my classmates, my seniors and juniors who were on the field, because Anantapur campus is going to go next, they could all see me struggling with the bike. So I would kickstart, the bike will go a little bit forward, it will stop. I would again kickstart, it will go a little bit forward, it will stop. So I was getting more and more frustrated. And here, Bhagwan, I could see in my rear view, he's happily, like, blessing everybody. He's smiling. He's enjoying. And I'm like sweating, sweating profusely here. And I'm getting nervous because once you go past the flags, you don't have any cover. And we have to go all the way back to the starting point and do stunts on motorbikes, right? So I was thinking something was wrong with my motorbike. And as I was struggling, till this day, I remember the wonderful advice that a Sai brother gave me. I don't know who that brother is. I didn't see the face, but this brother, he was just standing on the side. He said, sister, keep walking. I was like, that's all I heard. I heard, sister, keep walking. So what did I do? I was sitting on the bike and I was walking because the bike, you had to keep moving. Otherwise, I would get rear-ended by Bhagwan's car. So I was sitting on the bike and I was walking, and then we got to the drop-off point. Once we got to the drop-off point, I can't walk on the bike. I have to get off the bike and go. And so with all the anger that I could muster, I gave the bike one nice kickstart. I said, like, you got to get your act together. the bike. I gave the kickstart and boom, like the bike started. And I was able to come back, and everybody was avoiding me because they could see that, I had trouble. And, it's such a rare opportunity to be a part of that procession, to offer this to Bhagwan. And you want to do your best. You always want to do your best for Bhagwan, right? And I felt like, I had let Bhagwan down. So I was feeling extremely miserable and I was crying. And none of my, friends, my stunt buddies, they didn't know what to tell me. So it's not like they were avoiding me. They just didn't know what to tell me. My PE teacher, she just showed me her hand. She said, don't talk to me. I have to focus on all the other stuff. And one friend, she came up and she said, Aparna, what happened? So then I became very emotional and Chitravati was coming from my eyes. And I said, I don't know what happened. The bike failed me. And then she asked one very, very, very good, important, critical question. She said, did you say Sai Ram? And I was mortified. I was like, 8 years of Balvikas, growing up in a Sai family, 3 years of education in Anantapur, Bhagwan being right behind me. Even if I had whispered Sai Ram, he would have heard me. And I forgot. I forgot to chant the name of God at a time when I needed it the most. I completely forgot. And I think I was probably more ashamed that I forgot to chant his name and call on him for help. So what did I do? Once our event started, Sai Ram, 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 non-stop. The stunt event went well, bike didn't stop. The procession from the stadium back to the mandir, Sai Ram, 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 bike didn't stop, right? Not once. So it was, it was something that's, it is certain times in your life where you feel like, why did this happen? Why did you fail? But I've come to believe now that sometimes through failure, you learn better because you will never forget that lesson. You don't learn as much as the times when you do things right as when you don't do things right. And you feel like, I never want to repeat it again, right? So that's kind of like the context. What is the second part to this story? The second part to this story happened here in Los Angeles. And this will be kind of like the last story I would like to share, and then I'll open it up for questions. Fast forward 10 or 15 years later, I'm living here in Los Angeles. And at work, there's a lot of different kind of challenges that is happening. And, I feel like, my threshold is decent for stress, but I was kind of, getting to that point where like I couldn't handle it anymore. And one day I was driving back from work, and I was having this conversation with Bhagwan, and somehow I got reminded of this, what I did or did not do when I was a student. I said, Bhagwan, at that time you were physically I was physically next to you. We were close to each other physically, and I forgot to say your name. But now, physically, I'm so far away. I am 15,000 miles away from you here in Los Angeles, and you're in Puttaparthi, right? So at the top of my voice, I said, Sai Ram. And I said, I am remembering you, and I'm calling out to you. Where are you today? Right? I think sometimes I should speak for myself. Sometimes, I can get self-righteous. I feel like I have done this seva. I do this laksharchana. I'm trying to be a good person. Why should I go through difficulties too? Why are things, still hard? So I kind of got into that, self-righteous mode. So here I was challenging Swami. I was saying, that day you were physically close. I forgot to say your name, but look here today, I'm going through a challenging time, but I am keeping up my end of the deal. I am remembering your name. I am thinking about you, but where are you? That was my question to him. I asked the question. There was a car that was parallel to me on my left side. It was a 3-lane, going in one direction. So it's total of 6 lanes. So I was going in, I was coming back home. So I was driving west. So the car kind of, it was speeding up. So I kind of slowed down. It got in front of me just barely for like maybe, 20 seconds. It got into the right lane, made a right turn, and it disappeared. But for that 15 to 20 seconds it was there, Swami answered my question through the license plate in that car. So the question I had asked him was, I am remembering you. Where are you? That was my question, or that was my challenge to Bhagawan. And I got my answer. And I'm going to show you a picture of that license plate. And the reason why I have this picture is when I got my answer, it's like, when a little child is crying, you go and say, hey, and then the child stops crying because they're just like so startled by your reaction. So that was my reaction. And I was like, it jolted me, the response that I got. 6 or 7 months later, I started thinking I'm probably hallucinating. Maybe that didn't happen. I didn't get my answer. And exact to the date, 3 years later, the same car was parked outside a store that I was visiting, and I was able to take a picture of the license plate. So I'm going to now show you the picture. I hope you can see it. So the question I am asking Bhagwan is, I'm saying your name, where are you? And here Bhagwan is saying, I am within. And in California, you have 7 letters. The license plate is 7 letters, and this one is exactly 7 letters. Bhagavan is answering the question. He's always within our hearts. That's the favorite place for him, is in your heart. He's everywhere, but the only place that he wants to be in is your own hearts. So with this, I want to thank all of you for your listening, and I'm ready for questions if there are any. If there are no questions, then I can share more stories, but I would love to take some questions.
Sairam, Sister Aparna. No questions thus far, but I will let you know if we get any. Okay.
Okay. How much more time do I have?
Again, I'll just find out for you. Just one moment, Sairam.
There.
You have another 15 minutes is what I've been told. I've had one sort of semi-question come through, if you don't mind speaking about it.
Sure. Yep.
Sort of what your opinion on the current situation in terms of with the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization and the sad sort of division that's happened, if you want to say something.
Okay. You know, I think we can think of the situation in so many different ways, right? You can think of it from a worldly perspective. You can think of it from a spiritual perspective. And Bhagavan has always encouraged us, always, you know, any situation that we are in, to try our best to look at it from a spiritual perspective, not always from a worldly perspective. And the story that I'm reminded, you know, I can only share, you know, how you know, I'm trying my best to understand, you know, what is happening. But more importantly, the reason and the purpose for understanding it is, you know, to inform my own behavior, you know, my own thoughts, my own words, and my own actions. That is the purpose of, you know, trying to understand it from a spiritual perspective. The story that, you know, that Bhagavan often reminds me is during the time of coronation of Rama, and this is there in the Ramakatha Rasa Vahini, which is a wonderful book. All the Vahinis are beautiful. You know, this Bhagavan has given us so much, you know, for us to draw strength from. So this is the chapter on the coronation. I think it's part 2, the second book. And you know, Bhagavan beautifully describes, you know, the hall, you know, how Rama and Sita, you know, how they look so divine, and you know, all the chantings that is going on, and how much love is there in the hall. And Bhagavan also talks about how Lord Rama gave extra attention to those who actually accompanied him all the way from Sri Lanka back to Ayodhya, who helped him in his, you know, in his quest or conquest. And then Vibhishana gives Mother Sita this beautiful necklace. I know there is, you know, there are different versions of the story, so I'm going to just stick to what Bhagavan has said, because that's directly from the source. Vibhishana gives this beautiful necklace. It's different precious gems. And he was gifted this necklace by Varuna, the lord of the sea or the ocean. So he gives this necklace to Mother Sita. And Mother Sita, you know, she's kind of, you know, she appears befuddled, and she's looking at Lord Rama. Lord Rama understands her and he says, you can gift it to anybody who is here. It's your choice, because it's very, very precious. It's very exquisite, beautiful necklace. And it's something that Lord Varuna himself has sent, right? So it's from a god, and it's just, there's a lot of value, tremendous value to this necklace. So Mother Sita is looking around, and then she looks at Hanuman, and she feels like, okay, I have to gift this to Hanuman because he's the one, who kind of led the mission and who rescued me, who found me, rescued me. So she feels this tremendous gratitude, and she wants to gift this necklace to Hanuman. So when she looks at Hanuman, Hanuman recognizes that he has to, step closer. He steps closer. She gives him this necklace, and everybody in the audience is happy. It's just the way Swami describes it. It's just fantastic. Like, you feel like you're actually physically there and you're observing this whole exchange. What does Hanuman do? He plucks one precious gem and he bites it, and then he listens to it and he throws it out. And the first precious gem he does that, everybody is shocked. Then he takes the second one, bites it, listens to it, throws it out. Like, he's like almost disgusted. So every single gem, he's going through that. And Vibhishana is shocked, and he's thinking, there is a saying in Tamil, like, Korangu kaila kudutha poomala madi, meaning you don't give a flower garland to a monkey because the tendency of the monkey is to pick it apart, right? So Vibhishana is like, he's just agonized that, such a precious, precious gift, and it came from Lord Varuna himself, like how, it's like sacrilege that he's destroying this necklace. And finally, somebody, even Sita is mortified, but Rama doesn't say anything. He's cool and calm. Finally, one of the, kings, he says, like, what are you doing? Like, this is so valuable. It's so precious, and it's come from one of the gods, and you're destroying it. And then Hanuman says, like, look, I will not wear anything on my body which does not carry Rama's name. So then they're all shocked, like, what do you mean you will not wear anything that does not carry Rama's name? This body is also a dress for you. Are you saying that, this body of yours carries Rama's name? And that's when he plucks a hair from his chest and he puts it near the ear of that king who challenges him. And what does the king hear? He hears, Rama, 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 Rama. Even the hair on the body of Hanuman is chanting Lord Rama's name. It's a beautiful story demonstrating the devotion of Hanuman. I also feel like it has many layers to it. One aspect of it is the devotion of Hanuman that it exhibits, that, Hanuman is fully, completely immersed in the Lord's name. And, that's why he's an inspiration even for me and for so many devotees. That's why Bhagawan has Hanuman statue is the tallest in the stadium. The another, way of trying to understand it is, this is the inspiration that Bhagawan gave. So, it's not something on my own. It's from Bhagawan is, anything that you receive from anybody, the benchmark should be, does it carry the fragrance of God's name? It doesn't matter who that person is, like even for myself, right? Whether I'm a Sai student or, I've had many interviews with Bhagawan, or, whatever claim I can make, what I'm giving, does it carry the fragrance of God's name? Does it resonate? So I feel like always, for many years now, since Bhagwan gave me this understanding, I always feel like, the benchmark, no matter, in what situation you are in, you have to always use, God as the benchmark, not the world as the benchmark. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is, I'm going to come back to my chocolate cake now, because in the beginning, I shared with you that Bhagwan said, talk about chocolate cake, right? And you may have looked up the ingredients by now. So you can make a vegan chocolate cake, you can make an egg-free chocolate cake. But, so there's some, there could be different variations, but basic ingredients, are the same, right? You need all-purpose flour and you need cocoa powder. So if you look at the ratio, you need 3 cups of all-purpose flour and 1.5 cups of cocoa powder, right? So if you think in terms of quantity, the all-purpose flour is actually more when you think in terms of quantity. Cocoa powder is only half of that quantity, but it's not called an all-purpose flour cake. It's still called a chocolate cake because that is the power of the cocoa powder, right? That even though the quantity is in half, because it is so pure, it has this tremendous capacity to transform all the ingredients, identity, the all-purpose flour, the salt, the vinegar, the sugar, any other ingredient that you put into it. If you do a substitute, you use buttermilk, any ingredient that you put it, everything gets transformed into a chocolate cake and not all-purpose flour cake, right? That's the power of the cocoa powder. So what Swami is, I felt like Swami was trying to tell me is, it's the quality that matters, not the quantity. The other message that I got as I was reflecting since last night is you want to associate yourself with the cocoa powder, right? And the cocoa powder for me is always Bhagwan. But it's important that, the other ingredients are also there because that's when it becomes the chocolate cake. But don't focus so much on how much flour is there or how much vinegar is there, how much baking powder is there, how much salt is there. It all has a role to play. But when you focus on the cocoa powder and believe in the power of the cocoa powder will transform all the ingredients into a chocolate cake. I also feel like there are no simple answers here in our mind. When we try to analyze, any kind of situations, things always take time to understand. But if you also look at the history of civilization, there have always been changes since the beginning of time. Even if you think about, the lives of all the, avatars and great saints and sages. So what Swami was trying to tell me was whatever is happening is not something new in the history of civilization. It might seem new for us. We might feel repulsed by it, like how could this happen? How could that happen? But there were a lot of things that were happening even when Bhagwan was quote unquote physically present. But I have to look at the example that he set, which was he was always inclusive. He has said that always in his discourses that all are welcome. He never excluded anyone. He always, even when the super specialty hospital was inaugurated, he said this hospital is for everybody. It's not just for poor people. It is for everybody. He didn't make any distinctions of rich or poor. he didn't make distinctions for like, whether somebody believes him or does not believe in him. That is the example that Bhagawan had set. So for me, what I want to follow is his example. In day-to-day interactions and events, there might be some disagreements, some misunderstandings. We are I think we are inclined to like, who is right, who is wrong, what is happening. But if we can take a step back and, just reflect on Swami's life and Swami's message, there is, I usually have the habit of reading at least one page, any Swami's book I pick up, and every day I try to read one page. And my current reading is Conversations with Bhagawan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. This is by Dr. John Hislop, and it's a wonderful book. It's like, Q&A with Bhagawan. In that, Bhagawan is saying whenever there is misunderstanding, you should always keep it to that point. And you shouldn't like, do basically what we tend to do is post-mortem analysis. Like, they said this 5 years ago, they said this 10 years ago. He said, try not to, go beyond the current situation, focus on the current situation, and always, be loving. Always bring it back to the point of love. Now, sometimes, people might not want to engage. As long as you have done your part, and your conscience is clear, and you feel like you've allowed Swami to guide you, because you have to allow Swami to guide you, then you have to respect the drama that Swami has designed for us. Because I can't imagine, I'm sure you can't imagine Swami doing something that is not good for us. I just cannot fathom it. It's if you are convinced, and if you believe in your hearts that Swami is God, I mean, look at the license plate, right? Like, what are the odds that some child of God on an obscure street in Los Angeles, in the state of California, in the country of United States, on planet Earth, in solar system, in Milky Way. I mean, just if you look at the scale, if God can answer one child's question at the moment of need, what is it that he cannot do? Tomorrow he can, not even with, flicking the fingers, Swami can change anything. I feel that this is an exercise for me to try and focus my attention on Swami and the example that he has set, and to believe in the power of the cocoa powder, because it has that ability to transform. So if Swami has lit the lamp of love in our hearts, we let it shine, and we have to bring it back to love somehow. These are words that is coming, that's being inspired by Bhagawan. So I hope you will consider them. But I recognize the hurt that all of us have gone through. I think everybody, I don't think it's this side or that side. I think a lot of people are hurting. I want to acknowledge that. I don't want to minimize the pain that we have gone through. But I think somewhere we have to believe in the cocoa powder, and I think time will tell. It will reveal the divine drama. And it might not be on a global stage. I think Swami is going to come to each one of us individually and help us to understand, and help us to make those necessary changes in our own lives. Because there's no such thing as failure in this universe. That's what Swami wrote. These are not my words. So I want to again, thank everybody for this opportunity. Prayers to Swami that you feel his loving presence and grace in your hearts. And maybe someday I'll see all of you in person. Thank you again, Sai Ram.
Sister Aparna, on behalf of all the devotees in UK, I'd really like to thank you for your truly loving, heartfelt journey that you've had with Swami, that you really shared with all of us. And I think it has brought back a lot of memories for all of us, because each individual journey is a different way of reaching Swami. But it's really been inspiring to listen to your loving, heartfelt words. And you touched upon the humor of Swami. Yes, I remember from the early days, when Swami walks along Darshan line, there's always some kind of remark he will make, and people burst out laughing because he's a lot of humor. He does use a lot of humor as well to put across every message. And I remember also attending quite a few of the sports meets, and the most unusual sports and cultural events I've ever seen, and fascinated by the way things. And thank you so much for giving us the insight as to all this, how the procession takes place and all that. And you've been so fortunate to be part of that. And thank you very much for sharing all this with us. And I really do hope that you can come back and talk to us again. Jai Sai Ram. God bless, Sai Ram.
In the meeting first.